Thank you for tuning in to Global Impact's Philanthropy Insights video series. Today, I have the privilege of talking to Ashley Gravlee from Novelis and Global Impact's Board Chair from KPMG, Anita Whitehead, about building an effective corporate giving framework. I'm going to let Ashley and Anita introduce themselves a little bit and share a little bit with us initially about their work and subject matter expertise in this topic. Anita, why don't you go first?
Perfect. Thanks for having me today. So hi, everyone. I'm Anita Whitehead, partner at KPMG. I have two roles. I currently serve as the chair for the KPMG Foundation, but also provide consulting support to nonprofit organizations. I've been with the firm 21 years and have the pleasure of chairing Global Impact, which is a role I just took over a year ago. So thank you again for having me.
Thanks, Anita. And I too am honored to join Anita and Brittany for this discussion and have a quick chat to hopefully provide some insight into what we're working on. I am the manager of corporate social responsibility for Novelis. I've been in this role around 12 years, and with it has been the delight of being able to build out our global philanthropic strategy and manage the day-to-day efforts of those everywhere we operate. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Great. We are so excited to dive in. So today our topic is how to build an effective corporate giving framework. And so to kind of set the stage, maybe each of you can share a little bit on what corporate giving looks like at your company. Ashley, let's start with you.
Excellent. So thank you. So how Novelis approaches giving is we set a global budget and we are making a commitment to step up that budget more in line with our profits over a number of years. So we want to get to 1% pre-tax in the next few years. And how we also manage that process is I have what we call Novelis Neighbor Site Champions at each of our locations. We divide up our global budget to the give region and site level site champions operations or funds to operate. At Novelis headquarters, where I am, we look at global partnerships. So we focus on STEM, recycling, and then local community needs everywhere we operate. So we try to align our partnerships in a year-round capacity based on how can we partner to advance STEM, how can we partner to advance recycling and sustainability. Very important to Novelis since we are a company of engineers and we are also the world's largest recycler. So it's very important to us to be leading the way in those two areas. And then thirdly, it's also just as important to be relevant in our community. So how can we partner best with local stakeholders, create a sense of community, not only within partnerships in our community that's important to our business, but also important to our colleagues. So we do that through direct funding, grants, and then also an employee match, which we instituted in November 2020.
Great. And before we go to Anita, Ashley, what are some of and you touched on this a little bit, but how are some of those decisions made? You mentioned kind of that committee and who's involved in that decision-making process for your giving?
Yes, so since Novelis does not have a foundation, we have a number of ways that decisions are made. First and foremost, at the local level, our site champions work with their plant leadership, and some of them have local employee engagement committees who kind of filter through the opportunities and see how we want to get involved. Again, aligned with our strategy of STEM education recycling education, particularly around aluminum, since we're an aluminum company, and then those local needs. On a regional and global basis, we also have CSR councils on a regional and then a global level. And so our local sites submit plans at the regional level to let our regional leadership know how they're using the funding and how they're advancing the regional priorities. And then at the global level, that's when we look at larger global partnerships and also strategic initiatives that we might need to think about based on our regional priorities. And so that's how we kind of divide up the decision making. And so it's transparent, it's inclusive, and it's business focused.
Yeah, I can totally see the kind of overarching global framework and then the different layers of, local ownership and local input in that framework. Anita, how about you guys?
So we're a little bit different. While KPMG is a global firm, each of our countries is responsible for their own giving, and there are times where we might collectively, support a certain global effort. Ukraine is a perfect example. But here in the U.S., our corporate giving comes from two different buckets. There is a corporate side, and that's usually comes from the local offices. Our local office leaders have commitments that they'd like to make into the market, whether it's for community or market spend. But we also have a foundation, and so I'm going to focus today's conversation around the foundation, since this is where I sit. So our foundation, we've had a foundation for 50 years, and recently we've gone through a bit of a refresh. About a year ago, I came in and we reset the strategy and the vision. And what's exciting about that is we now have a focus area around equity and access. And so layered into that is this $125 million commitment that we've made to our communities for the next 5 years. And this is all in commemoration for our firm's 125th anniversary this year. So our foundation's focus areas are education, equity, community, and relief and resilience. And those pillars provide some of those guideposts for us on how do we give. We've set key budgets for each of those pillars. We're thinking about programming and specific programming under each pillar, as well as making grants and contributions to nonprofits across those 4 areas.
Great. Yeah, that's super helpful to kind of get a bigger picture. And it's nice that we have both of these kind of unique models here, a foundation and also just a broader corporate giving framework and framework. What are some examples of corporate giving initiatives you have? And Anita, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. So for us, I'll give a couple. One that we're actually launching right now. So on August 2nd, it is our day of service. And again, all tying to our 125th anniversary. And so what we have is a community impact grant program. Basically, our people can submit a grant request for $500. Actually, I should correct that, $1,250, because it's in honor of our 125th anniversary. But they will submit a grant request for an organization that they volunteer with. And that's kind of just a very small program that we're doing for our people to tie to our day of service. But also our foundation has programming around matching gifts. We support higher education. And in October, we actually announced opening up the program. So we'll be matching all higher ed, community colleges, trade schools. But we're also launching a double match program for 5 specific schools that we want to support their DEI efforts. And this is super exciting for us because it allows us to help schools around equity and access. Also engages our people in terms of matching. And like I said, we will double match those donations up to a total of $500,000. But we're launching programs for our BRGs, or our business resource groups. How can our BRGs leverage the funding from the foundation? And so giving them a pot of money and helping them find organizations that they'd like to give to. So we're on the journey of creating a lot of specialized programming around our foundation. We obviously have a disaster relief strategy, and we have an employee assistance fund, but these are just some of the simple programs that we have in our foundation today.
Yeah, and you can really kind of see the reach broader from, it really incorporates a lot of the other elements of the company, the business resource groups, all of those different components fit into your philanthropic and giving strategy at the foundation. Ashley, what about for you all?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to congratulate KPMG on its 125th year. Wow, what a legacy to build on. And I love the tie-ins that you have to honoring that anniversary with colleagues and giving back to the community in a way that's substantial. 125 million, that's amazing. Novelis also had a milestone last year, a little smaller, of our 10th annual Novelis Volunteer Month. We have it every October, and it's where we have colleagues around the world, and we encourage them to volunteer. And so we have a number of initiatives at each of our sites based on local community needs, advancing STEM, getting our communities to champion recycling and especially of aluminum. So we are excited about our 11th annual one coming up this October. So that's always a beloved tradition at Novelis. Like KPMG, we also have a matching gifts program, which is up to $2,500 annually for our colleagues, up to $2 million. And we're seeing growth in that. We just launched it a couple of years ago, so it's new. So we're working on better access for all of our folks and making sure that they know about this new tool. And we partner with Benevity, which has a range of tools that we can use to plan our volunteer events and then also make our corporate matches happen. One of our major initiatives and our largest global partnership is with First Robotics. And as a global CSR professional, they are truly, truly international. And so what we have been working on in the past couple of years, and certainly in the last 6 months, is where we do not have First Robotics teams close to some of our smaller plant operations, or they can be large operations just in a smaller town, whether it be Korea, Brazil, the US. And so we're partnering with First to do workshops to expose the students, the teachers, the parents to what First is. And so we've had a number of teams spring out of that, some of which are all girls teams, which when we think about Novelis's priorities of more women technology leaders, more women in engineering, that goes with that so nicely. And there's also a huge focus at First on teamwork and gracious professionalism, safety, and so it's just a good cultural fit for us beyond the engineering component. So we're growing that partnership, and again, trying to grow it in all of our regions where we operate. So that has been our focus. We're also looking into some exciting opportunities of developing recycling ecosystems in other parts of the world. We've seen this be very successful in Brazil, where they enjoy a 98% recycling rate. We've even seen, the economics make sense in the US and other countries. And so, what the beauty of infinitely recyclable aluminum is that it can create jobs perpetually because of the nature of having a material that's infinitely recyclable. So we want to partner with NGOs that can help us, one, think through sustainable livelihoods for communities that need it, and do the right thing by the planet by having a recycling infrastructure so that as middle class income rises in developing nations, we're not dealing with the same kind of struggles we have here in the US, where the recycling infrastructure is spotty in areas. So those are really cool things that I think, Novelis can uniquely partner with NGOs, and what excites me about my current outlook.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so many really unique and very impactful programs, it sounds like. One of the questions that we get a lot from clients, and I'm curious, Ashley, for you all, how has the not having a foundation or having a foundation impacted your work? Like, how does that impact your ability to execute on these initiatives, and what kind of tools and resources have you utilized?
Great question. So it's something I review on an annual basis. And I also get a lot of internal questions, because there's certainly amazing benefits of having a foundation, the flexibility it gives in those years where profits aren't exactly where you want them, but you can provide that continuity to NGOs, and other things that are just great benefits of having a foundation. For Novelis, even though we have assets and history, being a spinoff from several companies of 100 years old assets, we're kind of new. We're a new spinoff, only 17 years old, and so we have the opportunity to kind of make things our own. But with that comes branding challenges in our communities. And so we have found some of the ways that our plants and our local Novelis Neighbor Site Champions want to be visible in their community is through a lot of charitable sponsorships. And sometimes those are a bit tricky to fund out of a foundation. So I think where we, again, are in our giving, our desire to definitely partner in our communities in strategic ways, but also have some branding visibility. And so people get to know who we are. We have found the flexibility of giving out of a corporate giving budget beneficial to where we are. But again, it's certainly something that as we grow our budget, as I said, there's real commitment right up from the top. Our CEO, Steve Fisher, wants to grow our charitable investment, which, is so cool to have that support. And so I think we'll continue to assess and see, like if it makes sense in the future years of what KPMG does. KPMG does a hybrid, or if we go one way or the other. But I think both definitely have their benefits.
Yeah, Alita, would love to hear your experience, even revert back to a question I had asked Ashley earlier on too, like how does the decision making look different, and who is involved, and what does that look like for you at KPMG?
Yeah, so to your first question on, why do we have foundation? We've had one for 50 plus years. And I think with this renewed focus, it actually provides a vehicle for everyone to sort of look to, right? We've reconnected it to our values. We've reemphasized our commitment to our communities. And we're trying to figure out ways to engage our people. And one of the ways we've done that recently is we created an employee council of 40 diverse professionals across the business, across our BRGs, across the tenure with their firm, and just seeing the different ways that they want to actually engage with, right? Some of them want to just be ambassadors. Some want to actually have contests and name our programs, and some want to give us names of nonprofits they want us to fund. And so I'm actually loving that moment right now, because there's no shortage of great ideas. But this question of whether to have a foundation or not is something that I get asked a lot. On my other hat, I answered this question a lot. It's not for everybody, obviously. It takes time and a strategy to actually implement one. It takes cost, right, to maintain it every year. You have your annual compliance, but also takes just the dedication and commitment of having a board, right, and their level of engagement. So for us, our foundation is governed by a board, and we're going through that journey right now of what the role of the board is. Do they approve every single donation? Yes or no? There's different models to that, right? Or are they just tasked with sort of guiding the strategy of the foundation? And so for us right now, it's really focused on strategy, being the ambassador, get the word out. But in terms of the decision making, I've got a lot of stakeholders. I don't think I realized that when I jumped into this role. I was like, oh, it's great. I have a board. That's all I need. But we have a lot. We have our leadership who's very engaged with what we want to do. We have our Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, our Chief Diversity Officer. She's sort of my right arm on this. We've got individuals from all across our functions, audit, tax, and advisory, who have kind of their own goals in terms of what those functions want to do around giving and how do they feed into the foundation. And then, of course, we have our people, and we have a community impact team, which really is tasked with sort of our employee engagement and volunteerism. So I do have a lot of people sort of feeding into the strategy, which some days I'm like, boy, we have a lot to do to spend this $125 million, but I'm actually appreciative of having all of that input so that we can make some really good commitments into the communities.
One of the things I'm hearing from both of you is that there's like a never ending evolution. There's never ending set of strategies, and you are always constantly reevaluating and adjusting and figuring out what's going to work. And so in that, what resources have you all found to be really helpful to go from kind of that continually evolving strategy while, keeping some continuity to implementation? Maybe Anita, will start with you.
So there's a tons of resources, global impact being one, right? I talked to Scott and Brittany, talked to you many times, asking for advice and guidance. And then there's peer groups, which is how Ashley and I met. Ashley and I met through the conference board, through one of their councils that we're both still connected with. And I think these peer-to-peer groups really help, because we can not just have those safe space conversations, but likely the problem that we're trying to solve for, somebody has already gone through it. ACCP is another one, Association for Corporate Citizenship Professionals, which is an organization that I know Global Impact is now connected to, is another one where, just those good peer-to-peer conversations. I think everyone tries to find the textbook answer around this. There is not one. I think if there was, the three of us probably would have written the book by now. But really, I think a lot of it comes just from that peer-to-peer conversations.
Ashley, I need to add.
Yeah, I mean, I second what Anita says, and I'm so grateful for her friendship and leadership, and our meeting over the conference board. There's great groups, and we have had that council, I guess, over the last 10 years, and yeah, we never run out of things to talk about, and it's always evolving. And especially in the last 2 years, our focus and careers have been very much looked upon by leadership as integral to the business path forward, for employees, for our communities, for broader society. So I think that's been really cool to see. I also think that, having resources such as Global Impact, and then I also look to companies I admire, one of which is my own family, not my own family, but our Aditya Birla group. Novelis is part of the Aditya Birla group and Hindalco, and they are leading lights across Asia and other parts of the world for philanthropy. So I look to those. I try to emulate where I can, but really, peer discussions is really good. The other thing I'd say is, back to First Robotics, they have a circle of strategic partners, and the discussions that we have as major partners of theirs have been really helpful about how do you get mentors involved with first teams? How are you prioritizing giving? And so I just left a meeting last week of those strategic partners. And so I would say, from the nonprofit side, that is a good way. Bring some of your donors together and have discussions. And same thing If you're, our peer, try to seek out, which is what I have done, partners of the same nonprofits or some of your customers. So I have monthly calls with Ford and Ball and my peers there. We try to work on collaborations or just share what we're doing, and I think that's really been beneficial to Novelis.
I love that idea. And I love that call to action to nonprofits and companies out there to reach out to each other. And it's not about competition. It's about working together to advance and to create stronger impact. So before the last question, before we wrap up, what does corporate giving look like moving forward at your company? Is there anything, I know we shared a little bit, some upcoming celebrations and anniversaries, some new program launches, anything particularly that you are expecting to have to tackle in this next year that you want to share?
I think all of these conversations we can't leave without talking about technology. It's what platforms are we all using, and that's definitely something that we're trying to tackle today. Looking at what systems. We just made this commitment. We need a system. We need to measure impact. We need to be able to report not just to our stakeholders, but to our employees and to our communities. So for us, that's probably the biggest thing that's weighing on my mind today, is just having the right tools and technology and the right stories so that we can share our impact.
Yeah, and I that is a challenge at Novelis as well. Even with the tools we have with Benevity, how do we get people to use them, and how can we maximize their ROI? I think too, we want to amplify the work of our business resource groups. And there's a real sense of people now returning from COVID and return to office, coming together back in our community. So there's a real appetite to get back to volunteering and get back to in-person events. So how can we build off of that momentum and really have people feel good? And then I would say, the near to longer term priority is the sophistication of growing ESG reporting. So I have a great eye on, or a close eye on that and what that will mean, because that will take our program to a whole different level, and the transparency, the reporting, and just all of the things we do on a day-to-day basis. It's going to be amplified if it's in our financial reporting. So we'll need resources for that, and global impact and conference board, and just learning from peer to peer as we grow that sophistication. We'll need to learn how to do that well. And so never a day without new opportunities and challenges.
Absolutely. Very, very exciting. Thank you both, Ashley and Anita, so much for giving of your time for this conversation. And thanks to all of you who are tuning in. Global Impact has a specific expertise in this area of philanthropy, and our team provides the advisory as well as the infrastructure support for corporations. We have experience in assisting with corporate giving strategies and building out these frameworks, as well as supporting the philanthropic fund processing and distribution. If you'd like to learn more, go to charity.org or reach out to our team directly.